Good
Wow.
morning, good day, and welcome to you all for today's launch of the Black Founders Network. I'm so grateful for your participation today, and I'm really looking forward to what looks like an exciting agenda. I'd like to start by acknowledging this land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit River. Since it is the land upon which we will be learning, working, and meeting today, I think it's important to acknowledge the land because growing up in the Caribbean, I personally never heard the traditional names of the First Nations. And as an immigrant to Canada, I take this opportunity to commit myself to the struggle against the systems of oppression that have dispossessed Indigenous peoples of their lands and denied their rights to self-determination, an outcome that is familiar to me given my ethnic roots and is essential to human rights work across the world. So welcome once again, and I'm bringing you some greetings. My name is Professor Rhonda McEwen. I am the Vice Principal Academic and Dean at the University of Toronto, Mississauga, and I have been a strong champion and supporter of my colleagues as they have brought this particular institutional strategic initiative, the Black Founders Network, to this wonderful launch day today. Just in a way, I want to share some of the enthusiasm and support coming from the University of Toronto, Mississauga, and my own personal commitment to this network. I just want to share very briefly, in a way of sharing that with you, a little story that I hope will give some of the feelings that we have at UTM about the BFN launch today. And this is an Anansi story, and those of you who are from or are descendants of West Africans, this might be familiar to you. Anansi is a pretty interesting character from West Indian storytelling traditions. And these stories speak to some of the strongest threads tying African diasporas in the Caribbean and in North America to pre-enslavement ancestry, passing from village to households, whispered through the Middle Passage and sustaining on new soils. Anansi is sometimes considered a trickster. He's one part foil, one part friend, but certainly always ingenious. And when I think about UTM's commitment to the Black Founders Network and my own personal support, I thought this story might resonate. So one day, Anansi, after negotiating over several weeks for a beautiful crop of yams that someone grew, he was able to get himself a nice selection. He had looked forward to it. He boasted among his friends and family communities about how great he was going to make these yams. They were going to be the best yams he ever made. Anyway, he sat down to have it at the table. The smell, I can just tell you, if you've ever really cooked yams, they're kind of like a sweet potato if you don't know them, but really beautiful starch. The smell just was wafting out his window. And, people passing by would comment, my goodness, that must be the best meal ever. Anyway, so Anansi sat down to dig in, and just as he was about to eat, there was a knock at the door. He tried to pretend that he didn't hear it, but it came again. So he got up and went. And there was Brother Turtle outside the door. And he said, well, I was ambling past, and we all know turtles don't amble. He was slowly going past, and he said, I smelled this amazing aroma. What are you eating? And I'm so hungry. Could I have just a few mouthfuls? And Brother Anansi, knowing that he should share, was not actually really willing. So he said, you know what? Why don't you go wash your feet first? It's good manners, and then come in and sit and join me, and you can have some of the yam. So Turtle was like, oh, okay, fine. He's about to come in, and he said, no, not washing here. Go to the river. It would be a bit better. You'd get all your feet done at the same time. So Brother Turtle agreed. It was good manners, so he went and washed his feet. While he was gone, Anansi ate half the yams. So Turtle comes back, he knocks again, and Anansi says, come in. Then he said, wait, let me look at your feet again. And of course, now Turtle's feet are even worse than they were before. Now they're muddy. So he said, well, Turtle, I mean, it's really bad manners. You couldn't possibly come eat with me with your feet like that. And Turtle grudgingly agreed, but he saw that, he understood. He looked on the table and saw half those yams gone. He was no fool. He knew what was going on. So he went, washed his feet again, came back. By the time he knocked again, Oh, the door was open, yams were gone, and Nancy was just finishing up. So, and Nancy said, I'm so sorry. If you'd come fast enough, I would have been able to share with you. I negotiated so long for these yams, they're just the best. And so Turtle said, you know what? I hear you. I understand. I'm sorry that this happened, but why don't you come to dinner at my house tomorrow night? And of course, Anansi would never give up on something like free food. So he agreed in a hurry. On the way home, Turtle stopped and talked to a few other friends. He stopped and he talked to Ma Partridge, he talked to Sister Goose and Brother Fish. And a plan was made because they've all been at the brunt of Anansi's tricks before. So next day, Anansi's skipping on his way to Turtle's house. He's dressed to kill in a new jacket. He looked up, he saw Ma Partridge flying up ahead. He saw that she circled and then headed back the way she came. Interesting, whatever. He arrived at the shore near Turtle's house. Sister Goose was already waiting. Turtle had asked her to give Anansi a ride on her back to the spot right over Turtle's house, which was a cave under the water. Anansi was glad for this, less work for him, right? So he jumps on Goose and they sail over. When they arrived right over the spot where Turtle's cave was below, Brother Fish was there and he offered to swim alongside Anansi to make sure he got to the right cave. This is all amazing. How incredible. So Nancy was jumped in the water to go with Fish and then popped right back up. He tried again, he popped up. Well, of course, spiders are a little bit light, hard to get under that water. So Brother Fish suggested that Anansi put some stones in his jacket to weigh him down and then he would be able to sink. What a great idea, right? So he put the stones in his pocket. Right away, he sunk. Fish swam with him to the cave. Fish winks at Turtle and swims away. So Nancy is about to come in and Turtle says, welcome. And Nancy looked over his shoulder. He said, oh my goodness, look at that spread. The food was incredible. He was so excited. Turtle said, well, before you come, good manners. You should take your jacket off. You can't just come in here and sit down. And Nancy, of course, takes his jacket off. Whoosh, instantly, he flies back up to the top of the surface. And as he's flying off, he looks down and sees Turtle smiling, shaking his head and just tucking into that food. So all to say, what are the lessons? Apart from a good smile maybe today for you, there were a couple things. One, negotiations do have benefits, but sometimes we could think about sharing the benefits of those negotiations. Some people are better at that than others. We want to make sure we share our talents and our gifts. And the second, the power of the network to overcome a challenge, right? Turtle didn't go it alone. He went and found his other friends and neighbors who were willing to support him and help him overcome this challenge. So a very short story to say, the BRN for us is one of our favorite initiatives at UTM. It demonstrates the power of the network, the power of supporting each other as we overcome what can be for individual entrepreneurs and founders some challenges. I really do see that this is going to be a way forward for us at University of Toronto, and I look forward to all the amazing things that will come from this network. And now we are pleased to share a message from President Merrick Gertler, who has prepared something for us right now.
Good afternoon and welcome to Creating Successful Black Founders, the virtual launch of the Black Founders Network. BFN is an exciting new initiative in support of U of T's aspiring and existing Black entrepreneurs as they launch, fund, and scale impactful startups. It is a key initiative demonstrating our university's profound commitment to addressing systemic anti-Black racism and to promoting Black inclusion and excellence in our tri-campus community. Earlier this year, my colleagues and I received the findings of U of T's Anti-Black Racism Task Force, accepting all 56 of its recommendations. And I'm pleased to note that the network aligns closely with 5 core recommendations related to leadership and accountability, funding, data collection, anti-Black racism training, and promoting Black inclusive spaces. In fact, BFN is part of an intentional, coordinated, and inclusive institutional response that complements what is happening elsewhere in the university, not the least the Black Research Network that will officially launch tomorrow. The Black Founders Network has been developed with and for the Black entrepreneurship community. It is the result of consultation with over 100 Black entrepreneurs, community partners, leaders, and other key groups. As an initiative of the University of Toronto entrepreneurship community, the network will benefit from UTE's powerful network of campus accelerators, all of which will be critical players and hubs contributing to the success of BFN. I'd like to thank colleagues at UTE for their leadership and vision, and everyone who has contributed during those months of consultation. And on behalf of the entire University of Toronto community, I offer warm congratulations on the successful launch of the Black Founders Network. Thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank you very much to our president, Merrick Gertler, and for your attention so far this morning. I love seeing all of the chat messages and seeing where you're all tuning in from. This is wonderful. Now I'd love to pass it over to kickstart this event with my amazing, incredible, hardworking colleague, Efosa Ovano.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. If you could just give me a quick affirmation that you can hear me properly.
We can hear you.
Awesome. Thank you. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're tuning in from. My name is Efosa Ovano, and I am the program manager for the Black Founders Network. And we're going to be having some conversations today addressing the theme, which is creating successful Black founders. So we're going to start with the Black Founder Roundtable. We're also going to have an investor perspective roundtable. And then we're going to hear from our keynote speaker, Michael Seibel from Y Combinator. And then we're finally going to end with a community partner roundtable as well. So starting for our founder roundtable, I'm going to be having 3 founders from the U of T Tri-Campus with us. And I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves. So Melissa, Jeff, and Elsie, starting with Elsie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Elsie Amoko, and I'm the founder and CEO of Mommy Monitor. Mommy Monitor is a maternal health care application, and we customize maternal health care services for Black parents, Black birthing persons. We have had the opportunity to kind of be a part of this found-up space or startup space for the past, I would say, about 2.5 to 3 years. And we've been a part of various accelerators from Next 36 to currently now being in the Google Black Founders Accelerator to Health Innovation Hub at U of T, UTest, you name it. We've kind of been a part of most of them. And we are excited. 1863 Ventures as well in the States. Can't forget them because they've been really great. But I used my own research from my graduate education to kind of help me to begin this journey. And it's been great ever since. I think that we're in a unique space because we're focused on healthcare, but maternal health in particular. But then in addition to that, we are funded primarily by non-dilutive funding. And we've been able to do the work that we're doing quite successfully for the most part. So it's been a great adventure and I'm happy to be here. And I'm hopefully, if you guys have any questions, I can answer them later on.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Elsie. And passing it over to Jeff.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jeff. I'm a co-founder of Fine. We're building a social marketplace for beauty services. We're starting with hair services. So what we do is we build the technology that helps these hair artists, so think like barbers, braiders, installers, etc. We help them build the technology that helps them start and scale their business, and we connect them with a community of customers. So quickly, like I started Fine as a response to my own personal experience. In what feels like a past life, I was a semi-pro hockey player, and I lived in a bunch of small towns across North America, lived in Alaska for a bit, I lived in North Dakota, and everywhere I was, I really struggled to find a barber who could cut my hair. Fast forward a couple of years, I moved to Toronto and I ran into similar issues. I was asking people on the street where I can get my hair cut, people who had haircuts that I wanted. I thought it was a common problem, asked around, especially with women. As I'm sure a lot of people in the audience can relate, it's challenging to find a consistent, reliable barber, braider. People check on Instagram, people check on Facebook. We're building what could be a really compelling solution for the community.
Thank you so much, Jeff. And last but not least, Melissa.
Hello. What if there was an app that could circulate money among Black-owned businesses to keep wealth in our communities? Hi, my name is Melissa Ellis, and I'm the founder of Nobellum, a social enterprise with a mandate to support the startup of 100 Black-owned businesses in STEM. And our app solves the problem that I just posed. When I'm not leading the charge for Black founders in STEM, you can find me at TD Bank, where I work as a senior business systems analyst, supporting corporate technology. And as for why I started Nobellum, as a software engineer and project manager working in the tech world, I find that not only am I usually the only woman in the room, but I'm also often the only Black person in the room when it comes to tech spaces. And I also discovered that in North America, when a Black person gets paid, the dollar does not stay in our community for more than 6 hours. However, in other communities, the dollar stays for up to 28 days. What are we doing wrong? And how can I play a part in creating a stronger socioeconomic foundation for my community and our children? And that is what drove me to gather community leaders to execute our 5-year mandate to support Black founders in STEM.
Awesome, very well said. Thank you very much. So we're gonna do a quick round of questions across the board. Starting with Elsie, what have been the most critical factors to Mommy Monitor's success? So you guys have had a lot of success. Recently got accepted as the only Canadian startup in Google's Black Founder program, and just lots of milestones in the past. What would you say is the most critical factor to the success?
I think that this idea in the tech space of FOMO is actually quite accurate. I think that like when investors or just people generally in this space, like accelerators, whatever you would call it, or funders, even when they've seen that somebody else has invested in you, whether it be invested their time or their resources, whatever that looks like, other people typically want to jump on board as well. And I think to get to that point, what helped us is we made an effort to make partnerships with either community people, with different networks, whether it be academic or in the tech space or whatever that looks like. Truthfully, that was, I think, the recipe that really helped us early on. I think sometimes it is a little bit of luck as well. I think that it's hard. I think that we've all had moments where maybe you've applied for something and a friend has applied and you get it, or your friend gets it and the other person doesn't. But I think just also trying consistently. We made an effort. I have, for example, the last 6 months I spent just applying for different funds specifically for our work and seeking out different contracts. And once you set time aside to do that, after that, typically you'll get results. You may not get all of them, but you'll get a good percentage, right? And that percentage that you get back is enough to kind of keep the company going. So I think that has been kind of like the recipe of success, like a combination of networks, partnerships, and just kind of trying over and over again.
Amazing, amazing. And that's part of what we're hoping to do with Black Founders Network as well. So it's good that you say that. Going to Jeff. So you recently took a big leap, Jeff, quit your full-time job, to do Fine full-time. Can you share what made you take this leap to do Fine full-time?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the goal's always been to work on Fine full-time. I think it's challenging though to make that leap and still be able to do important things like pay my rent or buy food. So for the time being, I was working in management consulting. I spend a lot of my mornings, all my nights, and most weekends working on Fine. We were able to make a lot of progress. We built our MVP, got our first paying customers, and we established significant partnerships, but we wanted to move a lot quicker. So fortunately, we were able to close our pre-seed round, which gave me the ability to go full-time, give the team flexibility, turn our full attention to Fine. And Fosa, I'm sure you'll quote the fundraising stats for Black founders today, but I think initiatives like this, like BFN, the investors we're going to hear from on the call, people are really changing that narrative. And I'm excited what we can create when more and more people are able to fully focus on what they're building.
Very well said, brother. And yes, I know how difficult it was for you to make that leap, and lots of founders struggle with that as well. Going from a 9 to 5 to running your own company is a big jump. So good on you for that. Going over finally to Mel, can you share, Melissa, what you've struggled with the most as a founder, and I guess how this relates to your Nobellum experience?
Yeah, I would say that the biggest struggle was finding a network of skilled professionals that I could really grow this idea with. Even as I was building out the org, I needed accountants and legal for IP and graphic designers. I was able to build our websites, but that's not really the case for everyone. And so with our Nobel Hub app, now what we've done is we've curated an ecosystem of essential business service providers that really provide all the essential services that startups need. And another thing that was really crucial was mentorship. mentorship was a game changer. And sometimes you have to take risks to get the right rewards. I would literally go on LinkedIn and like look up people who were doing amazing things and just reach out. And I reached out to this lady, Georgette, and she was amazing. She didn't know me, but she was willing to listen and pitch my idea and let me pitch my ideas and open the right doors. And that led to a phenomenal relationship now that I have with UFT, where we're able to create this ecosystem, rolling out our work with the hub and the bridge over the next few months, to really create a ecosystem where early stage startups in the STEM space can thrive and really grow. And I think even as we further collaborate with BFN and being able to create that pipeline, we're going to be able to create an ecosystem that is going to solve a lot of the problems that I struggled with at the beginning. It's just being a part of that network and knowing the right people. And there's a quote that my mentor, Georgette, often says, which is never underestimate the power of one. One person can really create a huge ripple effect that can impact thousands. And I feel like that's what's happening here right now with BFN. BFN is creating an amazing atmosphere where the opportunities are endless for upcoming entrepreneurs, so they don't have to struggle the way that I did. So thank you guys again for creating this ecosystem.
So much, and that's the perfect way to end this founder roundtable. So it's very clear the need for a network, very clear the need for just learning from each other and starting that ripple effect that goes on to lead to big change. So I'm going to be passing it over now to Brian Duarte, who is going to be moderating the investor panel. Over to you, Brian.
Thank you very much, Ifoso. So welcome, everyone. So I'm Brian Duarte. I'm the managing partner for Black Tech Capital. We're a fund that invests at the pre-seed stage in Black entrepreneurs that are involved in clean tech. So a very niche approach. Right now, we're looking at about 6 startups that we are doing our due diligence on and getting ready to invest into. And to answer the question about what can make a difference here for Black founders, I mean, it's obvious that if Black founders were able to get more funding, as Jeff mentioned, at that pre-seed and seed stage, that is critical, and those funds are starting to come into play. But the other thing that we see, that I see personally, is prior to that, we know the Black community does not have that generational wealth there to rely on. So looking at ways to provide for young entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs in general that are just starting up, to give them some sort of living wage as they start to develop their idea just before they get to pre-seed is one of the things that I can see making a difference. So here on the panel today with me today is Melissa, Isaac, and Giselle. And first off, I'd like to start with Giselle to introduce yourself and say a little bit about Martyr Ventures. Mm-hmm. Okay, if we don't have Giselle yet, maybe I can turn over to Melissa.
Hi there. Can you hear me? All right, awesome. Thank you, everyone. So my name is Melissa. I'm a partner and head of operations at Bay Mills. We just launched a TV and production studio as well. So we're very busy here, you can imagine. And what we do is we focus on investing in diverse founders with a special focus on Black founders from the angel, pre-seed, seed, all the way to the A stage.
Awesome, thank you, Melissa. And Isaac, if you can give a brief introduction of yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Isaac, general partner of the Black Innovation Capital. We are seed and pre-seed venture fund, specifically focused on investing in Black founders in the tech space. Great to see everyone.
Thanks, Isaac. And if you could tell us a little bit, what is one of your suggestions for how to close the gap in, for Black founders in terms of being underfunded? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think I'm also the founder of the Black Innovation Fellowship, which is one of the first Black tech incubators within the university. And really the reason why we founded that was really to provide access to networking, access to collaboration, and through that access to VCs, angel investors in that environment. So I think the more we could create environments like this, the more we get more exposure to Black founders, to other angel investors and VCs, and the more capital will start to flow in.
Great, thanks for that answer, Isaac. And Giselle, over to you.
Sorry, Brian. So Giselle just sent a note. She's actually stuck in her hotel with a Wi-Fi issue. So she
Okay.
wasn't able to join the panel live. She's hoping she can make it, but she might not be able to make it in time.
All right. Thanks, Afonso. Okay, then Melissa, back to you. If you can answer that question about one of your suggestions and how to close the gap in the stats for Black founders and making a difference with that.
Absolutely. And so I'm going to go a little bit in a different direction. I'm going to say that talk to anybody and everybody you can to get some great insight and to get the connections, the introductions you need to start fundraising and getting your foot in the door. So this is why I say fundamentally is that rejection is your best friend, it's your mentor, and it's your coach. For every 9 no's you're going to hear, you're going to hear 1 yes, right? So you're going to really learn from that rejection, because number 1 is you are going to be able to double down on your mission and your why a lot better, so that each time you do go into a new meeting, your pitch is going to get stronger. And number 2 is you're going to build the resilience, right? So you're like the entrepreneurship journey, whether you're starting a fund or whether you are starting a company, it can be very lonely and very difficult, but also really, really fun. So hearing those no's, they're a great teacher and they're a great resiliency builder. And of course, like the last reason why rejection is really your best friend, your mentor and your coach, is that the quicker you get the no's, the quicker you get them out of the way, the quicker you get to the yeses. So keep going.
Awesome, thanks for that answer. And could you share with us your biggest lesson that you learned from starting Bay Mills Investment Group, and how is that helping you support Black founders better?
Oh, absolutely. So the biggest thing I've learned from helping launch Bay Mills, fundraising, and even now starting an angel fund, which is a sister fund, is that my voice, not only does it matter, it's important and it needs to be at the table. And so do all of yours. Never forget that you deserve to be there just as much as anybody else. You provide just as much value, insight, and brilliance, no matter what your background or what you look like. So go into every meeting and every interaction with that mindset.
Great, thank you for that answer.
You're
And
welcome.
Isaac, can you share your experience with Black Innovation Capital and your decision to invest into Finn? And maybe Jeff, maybe you can come back on camera for this.
Yeah, no, it's been a great experience. I originally was running Dreammaker Ventures, was a pre-seed to Series A angel fund, investing across the board with very good entrepreneurs, both within the Black community and outside the community. But then we saw a lack of diversity in terms of capital flowing into the Black community. So we wanted to make sure that we were very specific with our fund, and that's why we were fortunate to have the backers like BDC and RBC, who was able to come on board and back in our fund. And again, we're excited that Finn, Jeffrey will be one of the 4 companies that we're going to be doing our first checks into over the next couple of weeks. And really, I know and Jeffrey spoke a little bit about it in terms of making that decision to focus full time on this venture and on this business. That was part of the reason why we decided to make that decision, because of him, the team, the focus that they have, also the space that they're trying to disrupt. We think it's a massive opportunity. We're seeing that same growth for similar companies in the US. And of course, being an individual that's always trying to also get my hair cut, it's a challenge that a lot of individuals in our community face, and having that platform that they're creating to be able to do that, I think is a great opportunity here to own the Canadian space and then go outside Canada.
Awesome, thank you for that. So thank you for your words, Isaac, Melissa. If I can summarize what we were hearing here today, with funds like Black Tech Capital, Bay Mills Investment Group, Black Innovation Capital, the money is starting to grow. It's starting to come there for the Black community, and specifically focused on the Black community. I love Melissa's comments about resilience. Keep going at it, keep pushing. The entrepreneur journey is never easy, Black or otherwise. So you just got to keep going at it. And the support is coming and the support is there. And, excited, all of us, I'm sure, are excited as investors to really encourage, develop, and help Black entrepreneurs go on. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Afoso.
Thank you so much, Brian. I'm just checking with our keynote speaker, so he's joining in a minute. I think it would be a good opportunity to have some more conversation for the investors, because I've seen some questions coming down as well. So I'm going to throw this over to you, Brian. In terms of these diversity stats that I'm going to share later in the conversation, so less than 2% of venture funding in North America, for instance, went to Black founders. What is one way, and maybe this everyone can go around and answering this, what is one way that we can actually break this gap practically from an investor's perspective? So we'll probably start with you and then have Mel and Isaac go.
I mean, that stat, myself and my business partner, we were reviewing that stat over dinner. And that's really what helped us to launch and start Black Tech Capital. I mean, originally, I've been in the clean tech space, very much involved in that over the last 10 years. But in order to amplify that and make a difference, not only in that space, but for Black founders, knew we had to start it. So it starts, I think, with people like myself, Melissa, Isaac, Giselle, that are committed to investing in Black founders. And as more people see, funds like us come up, we're being approached by other different venture funds that are saying, hey, we want to invest in you because you're getting into those Black founders. We want to add diversity to our portfolio. So it's bit by bit. Melissa said really great earlier, one person makes a difference, and each of us is being that one person as we're going through this. I don't know if Melissa, if you'd like to add to that. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I'm just gathering my thoughts. I have so many to share, but I know the stats are pretty devastating, but I promise you that it's coming. There's a huge wave coming. In fact, in my most recent pitch deck, there's not that much race-based data in Canada yet, but I did manage to pull together some stats saying that, first of all, in 2031, so 10 years from now, the visible minority quote, in quotation marks, population is going to go from 20% where it is now to 31.4%, right? And if you, so the demographics are shifting. Like the first generation, second generation, even new immigrants coming into the country, like they are hungry for success and they understand that wealth and success, the opportunity to take their future into their own hands is through entrepreneurship. So the wave is coming, right? It's inevitable that we're going to have some rock stars, some unicorns. And so it really is a business decision to invest in diverse founders and to invest in Black founders, point blank.
Awesome, very well said. Isaac, did you want to add anything else on that?
Yeah, the quick thing that I would add really that we're seeing and we're excited to see that we didn't see 5-10 years ago is institutional relationships putting their forefront into the space. When you bring institutions, when you bring corporations into the space, that's when you start seeing systemic changes, barriers to access to capital. So when you see institutions like the U of T's of the world creating programs like this, that means that you're going to start seeing changes within the systems. When you're seeing venture funds putting money into funds like myself, like yours, like Melissa's, you're going to see a different type of capital going in. You're going to see different type of LPs going into these Black founders. And then through that, you're going to see more growth. And as those founders grow and they go from C to Series A and unicorns, members of their companies will now have access to capital to now reinvest as angel investors into the system. So it's excited that the infrastructure is being built for generations to come.
Awesome. Love all of that. Love everything that's being said there around that. And it's so key and so important. Afoso, are we ready to go or?
Yes, sir. We are good to go.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Brian. And thank you all. Very well said and very great panel. We have our keynote speaker now with us. So I don't think he needs too much of an introduction, but Michael is the managing director of Y Combinator, very successful entrepreneur in his past life and now currently an investor. And Michael, we're very glad that you have joined us today. Lots of anticipation having you join the U of T community and the Black Founders Network launch. And I'll give you the floor now to start with an intro and then dive into your spiel.
Great. Thanks for having me. So I'd like to spend a lot more time on questions. To kick it off, my name is Michael Seibel. I work at Y Combinator. Y Combinator is a startup accelerator that has funded over 3,000 companies in the last 16 years, including companies like Airbnb, Dropbox, Coinbase, Stripe, OpenSea, DoorDash, Instacart, and the company that I started, which was called Twitch, and many, many, many more. The purpose of YC was to make this startup world more accessible. And if you look at our history, there have been a number of innovations at YC that interestingly have stood the test of time. So the first is to get funding from YC. You don't have to network with us. You don't have to know us in any way. I think that's vitally important, to be completely honest. Number two, we don't deal with DEX. To get funding from YC, you fill out a simple application, just as simple as a college application, which everyone has done. Number three, you don't start the conversation with YC with a negotiation. All of our terms, the investment documents we use and our investment terms are all clearly stated on our website before you even apply. And then number four, unlike almost every other investor, when you join YC and you get investment from us, you also join a cohort of peers who can become your guides, your support, shoulders to cry on, people that you can give hugs to as you go through this kind of 10-year hellish journey that is doing a company. YC started in 2005, and it continuously shocks me how this is still a unique offering amongst the vast majority of the best investors in the world. And so that's why people do YC. That's why I did YC twice, in 2007 and 2012. And that's why I've been running the Early Stage Accelerator since 2016, because YC was my opportunity to break into the startup world. And now I feel like it's my responsibility to give back to the next generation of founders. I was asked to talk about my advice for founders, lessons that I've learned both as a founder and as an investor. And I want to make this slightly controversial. So here we go. Step one, if you believe the startup world is against you because of the way you look, you've lost before you started. Unfortunately, are you going to encounter bias in this world? Probably. But if you believe that the world is against you before you've started, go do another career. And good luck, because I think that if you bring that attitude into any career, you will find examples of that and you will defeat yourself. And if you bring a positive attitude into any career, you can be a trailblazer for the people who come after you. That's the first thing I want to say. The second is that the best founders, in my experience, love software as a tool to get things done. They love software. And I think this isn't spoken about enough. People talk about ideas, and you have to have a great idea, and you have to have experience, and blah, 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 all these other things. But the primary tool of the startup world, the primary reason why startups can have massive impact, global impact, relatively quickly, is because they're using software. And also often I see entrepreneurs not embracing the power of software, not geeking out about software, not caring about software. It's become more common for people to think about using no-code tools. It's become more common for people to say, oh, this isn't really a software company. It's not really a technology company. It's just software enabled. And I got to tell you, the people who love software will always beat the people who just kind of thumb their nose at software. They will always beat them. And so the best thing that you can do is kind of embrace the power of software and understand that most of the innovations that we take for granted today that have been invented in the last 25 years are because of software. The next thing, we have this term for people who are in the startup scene, but aren't willing to do the work. We call them scenesters. Don't be a scenester. It takes 10 years to build anything, anything that's going to last. And if you are not willing to give 10 years, this might not be the thing for you. There are too many people out there that look like they're succeeding quickly. There are too many dishonest press stories about things that look like they happen really fast. But when you dig under the surface, you realize that this shit takes a long time. I remember when I was first starting in 2006, I talked to my lawyer, who at the time was, I think he was 30, and I was 23. And I remember thinking that someone who was 30 is impossibly old. And he said, you know, according to our law firm's research, it takes 7 to 10 years for a company to exit. And I remember thinking, this guy's old. He doesn't know what he's talking about. There's no way it's going to take this long. And I invited him to a dinner when we sold the company 8 years later, and my whole 20s were gone. And I didn't even have to tell him he was right. Just looking at me, he was like, well, you know, I told you all those years back. And so if you're not really willing to sacrifice for this thing, the person who is will beat you. Next, discipline is more important than intelligence in our game. That doesn't mean you can't be smart. You need to be smart, let's be clear. But it's rare that the smartest person is the one who wins. It's rare that just being smart alone is what gets you to win. And I think what's tricky is that this is another thing that the press and kind of common startup lore really fucks up. You know, the Collison twins are called geniuses, or Elon Musk is called a genius, or, you know, Mark Zuckerberg's called a genius. And that genius word doesn't mean the same thing in the business context that it means in the academic context. And I think everyone gets it very confused. So when you actually look at what separates an average founder from a great founder, it's far more about doing things on the to-do list that you know you need to do, following the advice that you know is right. One of the funny things at YC is we write down so much advice. And once you join YC, there's like a massive library of advice. It's like, we call it the user manual. And it's a set of startup advice that was started by Paul Graham when he first started YC, and has been augmented and grown and grown and grown and grown. And, you know, we used to think that just the problem that founders have and the reason why they died was they didn't have the right advice. But, you know, a couple of years ago, I started realizing our library of advice is almost complete. Like, there's almost nothing I want to add to it. And companies are still making the same mistakes. And then I started realizing the hardest part about doing startup is following the advice that you know is right. Like, that's the hard part. Everyone knows they should be talking to their users. But did you talk to your users today? Everybody knows they should be looking at their metrics, but are you measuring the most important user actions? Are you and your teammates looking at them? Everyone knows they should be taking care of their health because it's a long journey, but are you getting sleep? Are you exercising? And so it turns out discipline is doing the things you know you're supposed to do. It turns out that's probably the most underrated skill of a successful startup founder. And I would argue that genius in the context of business and startups is far more talking about discipline than intelligence. And I'll give you a little example of this because I always thought this was really great. The Stripe founders came to speak at YC. And when Stripe started, the founders had a hypothesis. And the hypothesis was that startups needed to collect credit cards to charge people. And that in the very early days, the most important people deciding which credit card system to use were engineers, not business people. And so when they looked at all of the other YC companies and they were seeing how hard it was to find a credit card processor to onboard onto their software, it would take months. They just started seeing all their peers who are engineers just being super pissed. Why do I have to get on the phone? Why do I have to sign a 30-page contract? Why do I have to do all this stuff when all I want to do is accept credit cards online? And so here's where the discipline comes in. They wanted to test their hypothesis. The hypothesis was, if we build a payment processor that's ridiculously easy for engineers to onboard, they will choose us over the more established competitors. They will choose a startup over established competitors just because this thing is easy to use and is built for developers. Now, what the common founder will do at this point is say, I'm so afraid of no one using it that to test my hypothesis, I'm going to charge nothing for people to process credit cards. What the Stripe founders said was the exact opposite. They understood the idea that like people express their preferences through spending money, right? And they understood the YC advice. You should charge your customers. If you have an actual product where you're going to charge customers, you need to charge them up front. And so instead of giving the product away for free, instead of pricing the product comparable to their competition, they made their product more expensive. That's discipline. They said, if developers aren't willing to spend more money for an easier to use product, then our hypothesis is wrong. And so literally, they tested that hypothesis and it worked. It takes discipline to understand the core bet that you're making and to actually test that bet. It's so much easier to fall victim to fear. All right, next, your peers can be your worst enemies. So here's the problem. Throughout the entire education system, it pays, the successful strategy is to put yourself amongst the smart group of kids and to be slightly above average. That gets you tracked into the best classes in high school. That gets you access to the best universities. In those universities, that gets you access to the best internships. Put yourself amongst the smart group of people, be above average. Here's the problem in the startup world. The average startup dies and the slightly above average startup dies. So suddenly the strategy that's worked for your whole life completely fails you when you try to do a startup. When you try to do a startup, if you act like the people around you, you will die. When you're coming up with a startup idea, if you survey your 10 friends, what do they know? Why are they relevant? Do they even have the problem you're solving? So when you think about your peer group in the context of startups, you've got to be very, very careful. You can't use them in the same way that you use them in order to succeed in the academic world. And you can't use them in the same way that you can use them in order to succeed in the corporate world. The best startups are doing something that most of their peers think is stupid. And just to give you a very specific example, Twitch, which was this billion-dollar company that sold to Amazon, started as my co-founder, Justin Kan, wearing a camera on his head and broadcasting his life 24/7. None of our friends thought that was a good idea. Hell, if you asked us and gave us a truth serum, we would have told you we're skeptical it was a good idea. And so if you are looking to take a poll of the audience before deciding to do something, you are probably doing it wrong. The audience is probably irrelevant. Your peer group is probably irrelevant. If you are going one way and you see your peer group going the other way, you shouldn't be afraid. You should understand that that's normal. Next, be very careful who you take advice from. I've learned this a lot. people are used to having guides. And this is another problem with school, is that in school, the teacher has been this real life guide for you for so long that you massively overvalue real life advice. By that, I mean, you massively overvalue someone having a direct conversation with you one-on-one and giving you feedback advice. And so what I see founders do is they take whatever feedback is delivered to them in person and they weigh it way higher than any other advice they can find. Here's the problem. The people around you, especially when you're an early stage startup, tend to be not great. They tend to be not great. The best people you want advice from, you tend to have no access to. So how do you deal with this fact? How do you deal with the fact that your brain tells you, your experience tells you to listen to the people who you've got direct access to, that you can touch? But when you look at people's resumes, you can say very clearly, oh, these people over here have actually done it, but I can't talk to them. So this brings up my second point. Written advice can be 10x better than verbal advice. In fact, it's not only can be, it's almost always. Because if you think about the written advice that you get access to, almost always the person who's creating that advice has more experience than the individuals you have access to. And so if you can't get good at consuming written advice, your job's going to be 10x harder. 10x harder. So get good at it. And what's interesting is that oftentimes you can see this in school, whereas the smartest kid in the class, not the above average kid in the smart class, but the smartest kid in the smart class is almost always learning from books because the teacher can barely keep up with them. That's what you're aiming for. Next up, personal productivity is extremely important. One thing that's funny is that I think a lot of people want to relate the startup world to normal careers. And that's what people have context for, normal corporate careers. A much better mental frame for the startup world is sports. Because a lot of people play sports and almost no one wins, right? That's the startup world. A lot of players, almost no winners. And for the longest time, I tried to figure out what was separating out the winners from the losers. And one of the things that was coming up was this idea that like, oh, some people are naturally gifted. This is that genius bullshit. Oh, people are naturally gifted. And like, you're just not as gifted as they are. I read this book called Atomic Habits that really broke that myth down. What it basically said was that accomplished people get good, train themselves to be good at doing hard things. Hard things are hard for everyone. Can you train yourself to be better at doing hard things? And what does that sound like? That sounds exactly like athletics, right? No one is born being the best athlete. Every best athlete has to train. And the super best ones, more often than not, train harder than everyone else. And so what is the equivalent of training in the business world, right? It's that personal productivity. It's how much you can get done in a day. It's how you can process the hard tasks and accomplish them first versus ignoring the hard tasks. It's how you can be disciplined, which is hard, which is mentally difficult. And so you got to invest in that. And one of the tricks in that is what we tell YC founders when we start, which is imagine the 007 version of yourself. I love this concept of the 007 version of yourself because 007 always gets his ass kicked, always makes mistakes, always looks pretty beat up by the end of any movie, but always knows what the goal is and always pushes towards the goal. And so I think that's something that's really important to understand is that for you to actually succeed, you've got to construct, you've got to forge a better, more disciplined version of yourself, more formidable version of yourself. And I like that phrasing because it's not this like genetic thing, like you can do it. Like you can forge that version of yourself that gets shit done. Nobody's stopping you. The last one before I take questions is a really simple one. Talking to users and building products that they love is more important than pitching. We live in a world today where the only thing the press covers is, for early stage startups, is fundraising. And it's warping the mind of early stage founders. They think that fundraising is the KPI, is the goal, is the grade. Fundraising is not. I can go into more detail as to why, but we're seeing structural changes in this market, which is driving far more money into the market, which is causing investors to effectively try to shove money down the throats of startups and telling them that money is going to solve all the problems. It doesn't. YC is amazingly good at getting founders money, yet somehow the vast majority of those companies still fail. So money ain't the biggest challenge. It turns out that talking to your users and building something they love, that's the hard thing. That's where you're usually spending most of your time. The better you do that, the worse you can be at pitching. The worse you do that, it doesn't matter how good you are at pitching, because all the money in the world doesn't produce a great product. All right, so I know I'm getting short on time. Let me know if I've got any extra, and I'm happy to take a couple questions.
Awesome, thank you, Michael. How long do you have for our flex?
Let's see what I got. I thought we were ending at 2 minutes, but I can do another 7.
Awesome, perfect. Okay, so firstly, thank you so much for this and for joining us today. I think it's your birthday today, if I'm correct?
It is, yeah.
So the fact that you can even give us 30 minutes every time on your birthday is huge. We have lots of questions. I'm going to start with one in the chat that resonates with a lot of founders. So how do you find a good co-founder?
So I'll start by saying this. I think that a lot of people's thinking about a co-founder is bad, very, very bad. And I think that for most people who are in a university setting, your co-founder is somebody who you already know, you're already acquainted with, you've already met in some context. And I think the reason why people don't reach for the people around them is because they have a warped sense of what a co-founder needs to do. They somehow kind of imagine that this co-founder is 10 years from now going to be running a significant part of the company. And they kind of want the person to have the skills up front that they imagine someone would need 10 years from now. Now, what I'll tell you is you don't have those skills. So why would you expect your co-founder to? So it's just a completely, it's almost a corporate way of thinking about it. It's like, we have this job and I want someone with this resume to do it. That's not how you should be thinking about this at all. I would start by saying, who's someone you're going to love working with, even if the company fails? The second thing I would think about is, who's someone who's on a steep learning curve? Meaning, who's someone who you believe will learn more over time, who can get better over time, who's demonstrated that in their past? And then the third thing is, like, who's someone you get along with? A lot of companies die because the founders hate each other's guts. And they never even get the chance to do those things that you might think someone needs to, because the founders just don't get along with one another. So it's far better for you to be reaching for someone in your network than to be reaching for some mythical human that doesn't exist. If you don't have a network, we've built a tool. We have this program called startupschool.org, which is basically all the advice we give to YC companies, completely free and open to anyone in the world. Over 300,000 founders have actually done Startup School in the last 3 years. And we built a new tool associated with startupschool.org, which is a co-founder matching tool. And so you can also give that a try, but I would tell you only do that after you've tried to figure out, is there someone great in your network?
Very well said. Thank you for that great answer. I'm going to have one of the founders from the prior panel who had a question ask that to you as well. So if we can have Elsie, if you can ask your question to Michael.
Hi, Michael. My question was kind of surrounding US-based corporations and the current, like we see that they have a lot of kind of pitch competitions and investors and investments that are provided to Black students at HBCUs and focused on the Black community in particular in the US. Wondering how we can do that, or how we can kind of nudge US investors and corporations to kind of look at the Canadian Black founder community and startup community and create those same opportunities here, possibly.
Let me say something that's going to be controversial. None of that stuff's working. Don't
Okay.
copy things that aren't working. Like, I think this is something that's really, really common. Like, people copy the noise, but they don't copy the results. Don't start by looking at your peer organizations. Start by looking at the organizations that are producing the most successful companies. And then ask yourself what services they provide and why.
Okay.
And so what I would say is that, like, want to go into something that's revolutionary that you can do to help your students? We just talked about it, co-founders.
Mhm.
What opportunities can you create so that people can become friends with one another and potentially become co-founders with one another? Like, I don't think any school does that particularly well. I think a lot of schools are focused on funding. I think a lot of schools are focused on pitch competition, even though there is no billion-dollar YC company that started with the pitch competition. So that's not where I'd be going. Like, I actually think what's so weird about college is, in my experience, the group of people you get connected to in the beginning, it's hard to kind of change that group.
Mhm.
And I kind of think student organizations are an opportunity to kind of throw a new group of people together with one another. And if you can be getting a great mix of engineers and people who like design and people who like product, and you can just be putting them together and making friends, woof, you'd be doing 10x better than every other school program, 10x better. And I wouldn't measure the result as, did they create the company in college? Almost none of the companies that are successful in YC were started in college. I would create the metric around, did they start a company together within the next 5 years? And I think that that would be a far better way of thinking about it.
Awesome, thank you.
Welcome.
Very well said, Michael. I think I'll pass it for one more. I know we're at time. So we'll have Melissa Allen from Bay Mills, because I think I want us to get the investor perspective of this as well. So Melissa, if you can ask your question to Michael.
Hi, Michael. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Thank you. So my question is from the VC perspective, especially in emerging fund managers. So from your perspective, what are the best next steps after onboarding a portfolio company to be able to support them right through to their next round of funding?
I'm going to give you a controversial answer. I think that LPs often shape too much what VC funds, especially emerging managers, are doing. I think it's rare that emerging managers or expense managers can really help companies pre-product market fit. The global CEO of Sequoia did a podcast 2 weeks ago where he literally said, product market fit is up to the founders. Sequoia can help with all the other stuff. But I don't think investors really embrace that idea. So to me, I actually think what the emerging fund managers should be thinking about far more than how they can help founders. They should be thinking about what is the product that they have. And to me, the product of any fund is the process by which they decide whether to give a company money. And I think there are so many funds that say they're founder friendly, but they're absolutely not, because they don't audit that process. And one of the reasons why YC gets to invest in companies at a $2 million valuation, whereas normal investors have to pay crazy prices, is because we have a more founder-friendly process of deciding who gets money. And we think of that as our product. If more investors thought about the process of pitching them as their product and stopped thinking about what they do after the money as their product, they would be far, far more competitive. Every founder hates pitching investors. Every single one. It's the scariest and shittiest thing they do consistently. And what I find so funny with YC founders is that, like, even the ones who've got the best metrics are so intimidated by pitching investors. They often take bad deals just to be done. It is the scariest thing in the world to make a pitch deck and try to convince someone to give you money. And like, the biggest competitive advantage we have at YC is that the first step is not real time. The first step is an application. Take as long as you want. Formulate the words however you want. You don't have to perform for us. Because how often does a CEO in getting product market fit has to perform in that way? Almost never. So that would be my advice. And I think investors have a really hard time imagining that their process is broken because they look around at everyone else and they're like, oh, well, our process is better than everyone else. And it's like, yeah, if your peers all suck, then being average means you suck too. And so the best funds, in my experience, have the best process, the most founder-friendly process of pitching them.
Thank you. That's brilliant. Thank you so much. I haven't heard that perspective before. That's exactly why I asked it.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Michael. I'm happy that everyone got to see this because I listened to like so many of your videos, and this is exactly what I expected you to share. So I'm happy that everyone got to see this, and we'll be doing a follow-up as well after. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right. Have a great day.
You too. Okay, so we're going to get back to the agenda, and I am going to be having John, who is the director of University of Toronto Entrepreneurship, give some remarks before we give an overview of the Black Founders Network.
Fantastic. Thank you, Efosa, and good afternoon, everyone. And thanks to Michael for his insightful and candid remarks. I always get a little excited when the lead is, I would like this answer to be a little bit controversial, but I thought that there was some really thoughtful dialogue that came out of that conversation. And I also want to thank everybody watching live on this kind of momentous launch day for the Black Founders Network. It's really clear to me from the number of attendees, the buzz that's in the chat, and all the participants, both from the University of Toronto and from external groups. To me, this is just another set of examples as to why there's a need and demand for an initiative like the BFN. As the director of U of T Entrepreneurship, I have the privilege of representing a network of what we call campus-linked accelerators and entrepreneurial initiatives across the 3 campuses at U of T and in the divisions and the faculties at the universities. At the university, these engines of innovation across the UTE community will provide key support and resources for our Black founders. The BFN is designed to supplement and to complement and to leverage the opportunities that exist within this ecosystem and to create new ones as well. One of the important key criteria to the success of the BFN is what I've kind of started calling the ships, so mentorship and sponsorship and allyship, and the lineup of leaders that you see today on the virtual stage represent kind of a roster of role models and mentors that are already committed to the Black Founders Network. However, allies and advocates must come from all backgrounds to help open doors and to ensure that our Black founders have a seat at the table with the decision makers, the investors, the potential customers that will help their businesses grow. And it comes back to people, right? At the end of the day, the BFN will succeed because of the people that are involved in supporting it. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm thrilled that Efosa Obano is our inaugural program manager. I think he's doing a fantastic job today. Efosa has lived experience and is connected to the community. And when I use the term community, I don't only talk about the Black community where he's very well networked and very well respected, but also the entrepreneurship and the startup community as an entrepreneur himself. The technology community through his time at Dell Canada, and also very important, the U of T community is a proud alumni of U of T Scarborough campus. And so I'm really happy to have Efosa on board, and also now to hand things back to him to walk through our vision for the Black Founders Network, which is being built with and for U of T's Black entrepreneurs. Thank you, and back to you, Efosa.
Thank you, John, and thank you so much for all your supports, even from day one with having BFN get off the ground. Okay, so I am going to share my screen. And just give me a quick affirmation that you can see the screen. So the stats here shouldn't be, news to anybody. Over the last couple years, we tried to do some research, and to give context to how BFN was formed, I was actually approached by John and Derek, who is his lead at University of Toronto Entrepreneurship as well, for a conversation at the end of last year, and we were trying to figure out what U of T can do a bit better as it relates to entrepreneurship for Black founders and the Black community. So we started by doing an external scan of the ecosystem in Canada, more broadly in North America as well. And it was clear that there was a very big disparity in terms of Black companies getting supported. And the data just didn't exist at the university for us to also get the right research done. So this led to us saying, kind of like the classic, you want to build a company, you have to talk to the users / your target customers first before building something for them. So between December of 2020 and September, we did tons of consultation. So we spoke to over 100 founders, stakeholder partner leaders. We sponsored some events for the Black community as well. And we took part in programming that was done in U of T with the Black North Initiative and Rotman to get some more insights. And what we learned was, by asking the same set of questions to everyone here, first of all, we learned that there was a big lack of awareness from our community in terms of just what was available to them in the University of Toronto, but also more broadly in the ecosystem. We also found out that for those who leverage the resources available, they had a lot of feedback in terms of how aware they were for the representation statistics, how welcome they felt, in terms of being welcome there, and also just a lack of direction in terms of how to go about even building their companies. And they made it clear to us that we should build something that was for the Black founder community, that was built by the Black founder community as well. And in terms of user experiences and what is important to see, we find that community was the strongest need. I thought it was going to be capital. Capital was up there, but community was the strongest need that we got from the data that we collected. So this is how we built the Black Founders Network. The mission statement is to create this inclusive community for Black entrepreneurs at all stages and provide them with networks, resources, and inspiration to launch, fund, and scale impactful startups. Our vision is a future where we have a thriving community of Black founders from every industry and every state. And our values are very clear in terms of the fact that we want to celebrate our Black excellence. We also want to foster allyship, mentorship, and sponsorship. And it's a fight that we all have to do together, so we are stronger together. Just wanted to also quickly mention University of Toronto's commitment to anti-Black racism. There was a task force recommendation that was presented to the university, and the university accepted all 56 recommendations from the task force to tackle anti-Black racism. The Black Founders Network has been built very strongly in alignment with these task force recommendations. And the figures here in terms of the breakdown, this shows how well we align in terms of funding, Black spaces, leadership, training, and also collecting data. Now for the snapshot of how BFN is going to work, the slide part of the right-hand screen shows what we call the BFN pillar slide. It's going to start with education, awareness, and engagement. And we're going to use this actually to build the community portion of BFN and get this network of founders, investors, allies from every industry and every state. And then we're going to have a pipeline building mandates at the beginning, because what we have realized here is that there's not enough of Black founders in the right spaces, in the right programming to begin with. So this is not a fight that we can win in the short term. This is a fight that's going to involve building pipeline and getting the right Black founders in the right spaces. And then the three structured parts of the program, so core, accelerate, and scale. Core is the starting point for those who want to begin their entrepreneurial journey. We're going to be providing Smart Start grants to people here. You don't have to have an idea, you don't have to have things figured out, but you just have to want to start your entrepreneurial journey. So we're going to be providing Smart Start grants. and one-on-one training for a founder. Accelerate is for those who have gone beyond that initial stage. They have what we call an MVP, minimum viable product. And for this stage, we're going to be providing more funding as well. Up to $25,000 is the target for each company here. And they're going to also get 3 to 4 month structured programming that helps them to actually build their products and launch them to the market. The third stage is BFN scale. So this stage is going to be for those, again, who are further down in the cycle and they are already having companies that generate some revenue. We want to make sure that they stay alive in the long run. So we're going to be providing funding as well, and also working very closely with our investment partners. So some of the investors that you've seen and a lot of others that we're talking about, to triage them and make sure that they get raised for even like bigger rounds as well to stay alive. So this is kind of a snapshot of BFN. For year one, we're going to start by trying to learn. So it's a lot of learning, and we're going to make sure that the filters are set in place to target, starting with our UFT community initially, and hopefully with a long run goal of supporting the broader community as well. In terms of events, we're going to have lots of events that we're going to be hosting open to all. This is one of them, but we're going to have more. So stay tuned for these events. We hope that you all join the network so that you can benefit from the conversations that we have. And our roadmap in terms of the next year. So we've launched successfully. We had a target of 100 and we had over 500 people register. And today we've been joined by over 300 people at different points in time. So it's tick box for the first matrix. But beyond this first matrix, we want to learn from year one. Then after learning from year one, hopefully raise some more funding institutionally and from external partners to support the broader community as well. So this is kind of the snapshot of the next couple of years. And in terms of how you can get involved, firstly, on a personal level, we're constantly recruiting and getting, advisors, mentors, and folks that have expertise in investments, program planning, etc. So please feel free to get in touch with me if this is you. And on an institutional level, we're going to be having a call out as well. So we're in the process of forming our community partnerships, community champions, and also donors as well. So if there's any institutions here that has a mandate of supporting the Black community and entrepreneurship as well, we're very happy to chat after the launch. So with this, I am going to stop share, and we're going to be going to the next panel with our community partners. So I'm going to pass it over to Chris.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for that. I'm so excited to be here, and it's been amazing so far. As stated, my name is Chris Thompson. I am the current executive director of a national non-for-profit called the Federation of Black Canadians. I'm also the founder of a local charity in the Peel region called Skills for Life that looks toward supporting youth to develop life skills from an early age. And I'm also a very proud alumni from U of T as well. So I'm glad to see this happening and all the chat going on, and I hope to connect with some people as well. So I'm very excited, and thank you for selecting me to be the moderator for this panel coming up with a community partner rounds table. It's a very important aspect of any work, community engagement, and how do we get that going. And so the theme for this table is how do we efficiently engage the Black community in creating successful Black founders and ventures. And I'm so excited to have a wonderful guest of panelists here, which I'm going to get them to introduce themselves and even talk a little bit about what they do. So what I'll do is I'll say out your name, and then you can come on camera and then share your answer for the first question, to share who you are, a little bit about yourself, and then what you do in the sector. So I'll start off with Craig Wellington.
All right, thanks, Chris. I'm the executive director of Black Opportunity Fund. So the focus of Black Opportunity Fund is a laser-like focus about creating opportunity for access to capital. So our aim is to help dismantle anti-Black racism by building and sustaining a pool of capital to support Canada's Black communities. And the focus is facilitating access to capital for Black-led businesses to drive economic empowerment throughout the community across Canada. and also allocating resources to Black-led community organizations that are leading grassroots initiatives that are impacting the quality of life in the Black community. And the way that we aim to go about that is through various sources of capital. So raising capital through the corporate sector, through philanthropy, individual donations, and through the community. So the community has an investment in our model, as well as from government. So the flow of donations comes in, and then we have 3 channels by which we distribute. We have a philanthropic giving pool, which is providing support to organizations that serve the Black community and who meet the giving criteria we're establishing. And then the Black business pool, which is providing financing in loans, grants, equities in Black businesses to fill funding gap and to generate back loan income, equity returns, and so on. And then the third is the investment pool. So we'll be making investments to generate income and investments into Black startups and providing support along the journey. So that's, in a nutshell, who we are and what we do.
Thank you, Craig. Now I'll have Derek Raphael, your turn.
All right, perfect. First of all, thank you so much for this opportunity to share the Black Founders Network kickoff. This is a little bit about me. I wear a variety of hats. My first hat, within the ecosystem is the not-for-profit I started with my wife, Marilyn Raphael, is Icon Talent Partners, where we support top talented students from visible minority backgrounds, in particular from the Black community, and help them get into sectors where they're not often represented, such as venture capital, private equity, tech startups, et cetera. So we're really helping from Icon Talent Partners, from the ground level of creating that talent pool of potential Black investors, as well as we had an event, the Accelerate Symposium, earlier this year, where we made some non-dilutive investments in a startup based here in Canada, Esse Perculium, who did very well for themselves and actually received a Techstars investment. We also invested in a startup based in Nigeria, as well as another based in the United States. My other hat that I wear, which is a new hat, is a director for Antler, which is a global early stage venture capital firm where we invest in talented people. So if there's individuals in this call that have an interest in starting their own company, but they have yet to do so, I encourage you to apply, as we're looking to make investments in companies starting in January onward of 2022. Where we're just looking for people that are excited about the startup scene and they want to build something. So that's a little bit about me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Now we'll turn it over to introduce Bemi Akande.
Thank you so much, Chris, and thanks to everyone for having me here. So my name is Bemi. I'm the Director for Capital and Venture Programs at Elevate, where we work with founders from different underrepresented groups across Canada in launching and scaling their businesses at the different stages of their business. Right now, we're running an e-commerce accelerator called E-commerce North. It's the first of its kind in Canada, the first dedicated e-commerce accelerator. Over the next 3 years, we will be supporting 50 e-commerce companies in Canada. Apart from that, I wear another hat, which is I'm the general partner for Paysa Ventures, which is a venture capital firm investing at the pre-seed and seed stage in African tech companies that are solving the most compelling problems across the African continent. So thanks to everyone for having me. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much. And now I'll turn it over to Olutoyin Olede.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Olutoyin Oyelade, Olutoyin. Thank you very much, Chris. And thanks for having me here, Black Founders Network. Thanks for having me at FOSA. It's such a pleasure, it's such a joy to be here. So I work in the nonprofit sector. I work in the nonprofit sector and also in the for-profit sector. And in the for-profit sector, I am founding partner at INFCAP Corporation. INFCAP Corporation is an investment advisory firm with partners in Nigeria and in Canada. INFCAP has actually invested extensively, and we focus largely on the real estate investment sector. And so Splash World Water Parks in Nigeria is the first that we did. It's actually, it's reputed to be the very first in Nigeria, the water parks, with various theme parks. And then we also largely focus in Canada on the real estate sector, also managing a lot of startup groups that are looking for opportunities to invest under the co-ownership structure. The more recent one that we just did in Canada is the Entrepreneurs Point, which is a co-working space downtown Toronto. And that looks to manage and incubate small businesses and startup groups looking to advance their entrepreneurship journey. So in terms of incubating them and accelerating their businesses. And so that's what we do largely. And in the for-profit sector, I am president, CEO of CASA Foundation for International Development. And so I'm sure you'll get to hear more about CASA Foundation. CASA Foundation started 11 years ago with a focus on a trifold approach of sponsorship, partnerships, and mentorship, looking to build up entrepreneurs, looking to help them scale in their journey, and ensuring that we connect them with partners that are required and some of the resources that they require in the industry. We partner with a lot of banks to do this and a lot of institutions, from the Ryerson University at the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub to the RBC and the Scotiabank groups. Those are some of our sponsors so far, and we've been able to build up a lot of entrepreneurs in this space. You'll get to hear a lot more about us in the course of this discussion today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining. And for all of you, great panelists to have here. So I have a few questions here I'm going to ask you all individually. I know we're a little behind time, but I'm going to go through them anyways and give you the time you deserve to answer them. I have about 2 minutes. So I'll start off with Craig Wellington. First question for you. So BOF has received millions in funding from corporations such as National Bank and TD. Are you able to share with us what is your investment strategy for supporting Black founders?
Yeah, I mean, those are kind of the more prominent ones that you hear about. What we do have and are working on the NDA with some other financial institutions and other partners in building out programs. So the goal is to ramp up our programming for support for Black businesses to roll out in the first quarter of next year, in terms of the investment strategy, in terms of lending strategy, and in terms of grants as well. So we're building the infrastructure around that program and making sure that everything we do is built around an anti-oppression lens, looking at kind of the relationship with founders, looking at the adjudication process to take away many of the barriers that are in place. And in addition to that, what we're looking at is understanding that we have a very significant expert network. Yes, I'm Jamaican. Somebody just asked me about if I used ramp up. Yeah, absolutely, fire. Yeah, so setting up access to mentorships, to guidance to founders at all stages of their journey to prepare them to pitch, because it's not just about access to capital. It's access to information, it's access to key learning, and so on. And then, of course, access to capital and to deal flow, access to networks. So building all of those supports in place. I mean, we've just wrapped up the funding program that we rolled out with CELAR, funded by Facebook's Canadian Innovation Leaders Against Racism, which 1,700 applicants from across Canada, just showing the significant need, and looking at some of the ones that we were selected for funding, and we will be publicizing that. Just some incredible innovations that are displayed, and one of the things we're going to make sure we're doing is providing opportunities to showcase those through the network as well, to give them opportunities into procurement, opportunities into further investment.
Thank you. Thank you for that. We're going to keep moving here just for time. Derek, so the next question for you. You've recently been appointed Director of Antler Canada, along with your work on ICON. Are you able to share with us how you plan to support Black founders combining both? And I'm going to ask if you could try to keep it to a minute or so.
Okay, no worries. I'll say that through Antler, one of the reasons I was really attracted to this role is in my role, I serve as the first line of defense for folks that are applying for funding. Over the next 4 years, we're looking to make over 100 investments. And in terms of our investment terms, we're looking at $150,000 Canadian for 10% of the company. And one thing that makes what we're doing fairly unique is that we're actually looking for exceptional people that have some type of idea. And during our program, you'll build the idea in the program. So it's not like some initiatives where you have a business, you've been going around for a year or two. We actually feel at that stage, you're too far along. We're looking for you at that ideation stage, which is fairly unique. One thing I'm mindful is a lot of times within this venture capital ecosystem is that a lot of the capital doesn't necessarily go to folks that look like myself. So I'm going to be, really mindful to, go to events like this so that the community know that this is an opportunity. To go to various other organizations and say that this is an opportunity that you should consider and that you should apply for. Because I think a lot of times you only miss the shots that you don't take. I'll say how ICON Talent Partners dovetails into this work is I think it's important for us to have representation through what we're all doing on this panel, which is investing capital. But I think it's also important to create bench strength so that there's more of us that are providing capital. So ICON Talent Partners has been very fortunate to partner with the Canadian Venture Capital and Private Equity Association, the CVCA, to allow opportunities for folks of color to get internships and full-time jobs. Since ICON Talent Partners started in the November of 2019, we've helped to place and support 2 Black males that are working full-time in venture capital now. Georgian, which is $1 billion fund, and Relay, which is another major fund in Canada. My apologies, we need to do better with the metrics of full-time for Black females as well. But one thing we're really mindful of is with our recent pilot with CVCA, out of the 10 candidates that got placements, 5 were Black. And I think that's a number that people need to be mindful of, is that more than likely in the next 2 years, the members of the ICON community that are in venture capital, currently we're at 12, next year will likely be 30. So we're moving the needle quickly in the venture capital space. And as everybody on this call knows, it's very difficult to get access to these types of roles in venture capital and private equity. So that's how I mold the 2, Chris.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I see the comments going great. Everybody's saying great work. So congratulations so far. Okay, we're going to keep moving here. Bemi, you've had experience supporting Black founders through Elevate, DMZ, and Pacer Ventures. Could you share with us what is your biggest learning on how we can execute BFN properly? And again, around a minute or so to share.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Chris. It's a good question. Some of the biggest learnings I've had so far, having run programs, entrepreneurship programs for Black founders, has been that there needs to be some kind of a system and structure to properly understand the needs of founders at different stages in their business. As you all know, there's the idea stage, there's pre-revenue, there's when you just build a product or launch a service and you're still a bit pre-revenue, but you already have something out in the market. And there's a stage when you're looking to scale. All these stages are unique in themselves. And it can come in different forms. I always suggest having a stage-gated process where founders can move from stage to stage and take advantage of the resources that are available in each particular stage. So what I've learned so far is just fully understanding the needs of every founder at every stage and providing the resources, the capabilities in 3 forms, actually. I always recommend community, coaching, and capital. Community in the sense that having founders interact with themselves is really important, not just amongst themselves, but with founders that have gone ahead of them for some kind of aspirational motive around that. And secondly, is the coaching element, which is very specific to the different functions that helps a business grow at a particular stage. And lastly is capital. I also run Pacer Ventures, where we've launched a fund where we write checks into companies at the pre-seed and seed stage. Capital is really important for them. and understanding what smart capital is quite important, right? So I would say understanding the needs of every founder in every stage, catering for those needs within their own context, and moving them along the different stage gated process in a way that ensures that there's some competitive elements to say, I'm going to move to the next stage when I fulfill certain milestones, certain metrics, but providing the support to help them fulfill those. So I would say those are the key elements in terms of learnings that I've had working with Black founders over the years. For example, in e-commerce Node also, we are launching an early stage program that is just for the idea stage founders. And those kinds of resources that are available in that stage is different from the scale-up program that we run. So I'll leave it at that, but that's a very key learning that we've had so far.
Thank you so much for sharing. Olutoyin, this is going to be your question. So CASA Foundation is receiving 4.7 million as part of the recently announced government funding. How are you going to use this to create successful Black founders to support that? And you have about a minute or so.
Right, thank you, Chris, for that question. Indeed, CASA Foundation is proud to be appointed as one of the program managers of the Black funding provided by the federal government in Canada. The idea then is to weigh in on our success at Entrepreneurs Point Academy, the impact we've made so far, over 3 years running an incubator, making sure that Black entrepreneurs are trained and prepared for the business space. We're going to weigh in on this and leverage the existing platform to build what you now call the Black Advisory Hub. And so this Black Advisory Hub will be the platform where people get trained, where people begin to look to connecting with other people. One thing we realize is that since the beginning of the intervention funds of over 401 million provided by the federal government so far, what we see is a lot of applications, particularly for the Black Loan Fund. I believe a lot of people in the room today are aware of this fund. But what we see is an average of 30% success rate. And so you find a situation where you have over 50, 60,000 groups of businesses applying for loans because they have great ideas, because they want to execute quickly. But the reality is that they are not being approved for the loans. And what are the gaps? A lot of people have talked about the gaps this afternoon, so I'm not going to repeat those gaps. We know them, the challenges. And this is the entire purpose of Black Advisory Hub. So people come into the hub, they sign up and connect with us, and then we're able to put them in that space where they become well prepared to become bankable, where you can actually get access to the loans and the grants that you're looking for. A lot of governance issues, a lot of structural issues. The businesses that are being built, can they be well sustained in the long term? I think I make bold to say the answer is no, from what we've seen so far, not only from research, but from actually the evidence on ground, the reality on ground, the checks on ground. So the idea then is to actually come, connect with us and sign up at blackadvisoryhub.ca, because the federal government has provided this avenue for people to be trained. There's nothing like actually having people that are in, that are on the platform, really train you, people that have actually been employed, Black-led groups coming together, from associations to chambers of commerce, from the continental groups of Africa, the Caribbean, and so on, being the ones mentoring and now reviewing the books. Then it becomes more doable, if you get what I mean in quotes. The loan becomes, checked and accessible, and then you are actually finding somebody to recommend you, put you into the door. I think that's actually what's been prepared for us now. And I know that, of course, a lot of people talk about preparation. Indeed, we need to prepare, but we've been preparing for a bit. So this is the time to actually weigh in on this opportunity, connect with the group, and make sure your loans are approved. And that's the purpose of the Black Advisory Hub.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I just want to say thank you to all of you for the work that you're doing in the community and your businesses and your lives, wearing multiple hats and doing that. Thank you so much. Very quickly, just as a recap, I think one of the biggest takeaways is the important work you're doing to all of you to kind of help create the foundation and be able to educate community on opportunities and take away barriers. We often see in the work we're doing that a lot of our community face barriers and obstacles in terms of trying to even access funding or more opportunities. And groups like yourselves are trying to, help to make the connection to these opportunities to the community so they can get into these opportunities, which is great. The coaching part of this aspect is great. Being able to allow the service of being to coach others in the community to be able to get to this, I think is important with our young people growing up and also others that are in the community. And I think overall, just the education that the community agencies and groups can provide to help people understand about these opportunities that are being spoken about today. I see a lot of people sharing within the chat, and hopefully there's connections to be made across this. But I just want to say once again, thank you for this time. And this was a great opportunity to share. And with that, I'll pass it over to Ifosa, and thanks for having me once again.
Thank you so much, Chris, and thank you for the panels as well. I'm so sorry to everyone that we're over time. This is what happens when you have so many great conversations. I'm going to have Wisdom, who is a great mentor of mine, the principal of University of Toronto Scarborough. He's going to be giving us the closing remarks as well as we wrap up today. Wisdom, over to you.
Thank you, Fosa. I hope you can hear me. Great. So yeah, it's always good when you have exciting conversations going on to have to cut it off. But we take consolation in the fact that this is just the beginning, and there'll be many more opportunities for conversations. So I just want to thank everyone for the opportunity to be here and to share some concluding remarks. As I sat through the afternoon program and listened, my mind's eye scanned the journey from the origins of the BFN. I remember some early conversations that we at UTSC engaged in with our colleagues about what it's possible, right? And those periods that looked like the incubation phase of the BFN were just playing out in my mind's eye this afternoon as I listened to all of you. And it's great to see that work come to reality today. As a member of the inaugural Leadership Council of the Network and principal of the UTSC campus that has supported this initiative and been part of this journey from the beginning, I'm really very proud of what has been accomplished in a relatively short space of time. The fact that we all gathered here today is a testament to the dedicated and tireless work that a number of you have undertaken to make Black excellence visible and to bring this vision to fruition. Like a seed that is well nurtured to grow and to provide sustenance, the BFN is poised to be a catalyst for transformational change in Canadian entrepreneurship and by extension, our broader societies at home and around the world. If we all stay true to our commitment to this mission and support the work that is before us. Our very presence here this afternoon and the comments from participants in the chat highlights the importance of BFN's mission and its vision of creating inclusive, successful, and impactful communities of Black leaders and founders in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. I hope you're all inspired by the accomplishments and possibilities that have been enunciated by our presenters. Kudos to all of them for the impact that they're making in our communities. If anyone has any doubt about what is achievable by the network, you only have to let these accomplishments sink in. Let's all be energized by the possibilities and mobilized to make the seemingly impossible possible, to make the difficult barrier-free, to critically engage with and surmount the realities of structural and systemic inequalities and inequities, and to open doors of opportunity to Black entrepreneurs and innovators at all stages of the innovation and entrepreneurship life cycle. Together, we can accomplish amazing things. I call on all of us to galvanize the commitment, talents, enthusiasm, and ideas that have been on display this afternoon and bring them together in synergy and harmony under the BFN umbrella. I urge us to confidently go forth to deliver on our vision and to build on the wonderful success stories we heard this afternoon so that we may be able to sustain a thriving ecosystem of Black entrepreneurs in all spheres of life and by extension, inclusive, flourishing communities. I thank all of you for joining us today from around the globe and for your support of this exciting collective mission and for the potentially transformative outcomes of our shared vision. Finally, I'll be remiss if I didn't say this. I want to thank and acknowledge and to applaud the work of our colleague, Ifosa, John, and others who have made extraordinary investments of time, energy, and hard work to make BFN a reality and to organize today's launch event. I'm sure that they are fulfilled by the exciting reality of today's gathering and the promises of tomorrow that beckons from the horizon. I wish you all every success as you proceed into your various endeavors to make sure that Black excellence flourishes and thrives. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Wisdom, for those remarks. And sorry again that we kept you longer than planned. So we're gonna wrap up the event today by sharing some next steps and takeaways and how you can keep in touch, because I think I saw some people saying that on the chat. So we're gonna quickly share the screen for how you can keep in touch and how you can get involved with us. But we just wanna say a big, big thank you to everyone for joining today. It's been more than we expected in terms of a turnout and just all the engagements, and we are super excited. So 1 second, I will share the closing screen. So thank you so much. Anyone who wants to get involved, please visit the BFN website. Also, we have the Black Research Network launch, which is happening tomorrow as well. The link is in the chat as well. For those who are able to join, it's another initiative that's been very aligned with the Black Founders Network in its creation and its launch. Thank you so much again, and thank you for joining us today.